From a computational standpoint, paying the full cost of disposal for each waste category may seem like the ultimate solution to combat landfills and dump sites. However, this direction is not necessarily viewed as such by all the stakeholders, and here is why. First, simply paying the full disposal fee places an additional financial burden on the waste generators. And if they are able to absorb it, then waste generation may continue with no motivation to change. The second is that at the same time, commercially oriented waste management participants just continue to generate profits as any additional tariff or tax is passed down the waste management supply and value chain. Waste collector and transporter, landfill operator, and others will pursue their business as usual, maintaining or even increasing their net profit. Third, paying the social and environmental costs does not always reverse the damage or adverse effects caused by the waste generation and disposal. And for example, health issues caused by environmental factors may not completely disappear even with intensive treatment and cure. Statistics have shown that high tariffs and disposal fees alone did not lead to a decrease in waste generation in the European Union. In fact, some countries have seen an increase in municipal solid waste generation despite implementing this concept. Eventually, it became clear that neither of the previous two economic directions that we discussed in our videos are capable of resolving the waste dilemma, which is to maintain economic growth and thus products and services consumption, but at the same time eliminating the environment deterioration. This realization has prompted scientists to rethink waste management economics and take a leading role in finding a resolution for the waste problem and its consequences. It is worth noting that economists have proven to be the most effective waste and environment strategists, helping to shape the optimum economic direction of waste management. And this direction focuses on addressing the full life cycle cost of waste rather than just calculating the cost of its disposal. And to understand the origins of this direction, let's take a look at its history. It begins with the work of Arthur Pigou, a Cambridge economist famous for his theory of the potential divergence between private benefits and costs, or the values that are captured by markets. Very complicated, isn't it? In simple terms, this theory examines the economic activities that have an impact on people beyond the supply and value chains. It also considers the hidden costs of these activities and how to offset them. Pigou explained his views and theory in his book, The Economics of Welfare, written back in 1932, in which he identified 3 situations where he believed there is a divergence between private and social benefits and costs. I am interested in 2 of these situations. The first includes situations where resources are invested in private parks in cities, which can improve the air quality of the neighborhood and bring social and environmental benefits to the public, even if they are not directly admitted to them. The land prices and house rentals go up just because they are situated now in a green zone. The amount of visitors drags investors in food and beverage industry, followed by hospitality and entertainment industries. The same is true for resources invested in roads and tramways that increase the value of adjacent land. Similarly, resources devoted to afforestation can have a beneficial effect on climate beyond the borders of the estate owned by the person responsible for the forest. Now, the second situation is tenant farmers. When a tenant leases a farm for a short period from its owner, during which The tenant is interested to squeeze out all the juices of the soil with minimum investment possible. And this exposes the landlord for a hidden cost in order to return the land to its original fertility level and maintain its value for the next tenant. However, such collateral damage is never calculated for by the landowner in the first place. Pigo's ideas were groundbreaking, but it took some time for other economists to adopt this theory of calculating social and environmental costs. It wasn't until late 50s and 60s that Pigovian model and policies gained traction. And during this time, the term Pigovian tax sparked numerous publications, debates, and further developed theories. So, let's take a closer look at Pigo's idea. Imagine that you are planning to manufacture a product or provide a service. Let's say transporting a predetermined amount of waste from point A to point B. This is referred to as your original output in the graph. You would calculate your total cost using the conventional method, which Pigo referred to as marginal private cost, and set your service price to cover your expenses and fulfill your obligations. However, Pigo argued that there is another cost to consider, which is the hidden cost of damage caused to others, which is called the marginal social cost in the graph. This means that your aggregated marginal cost increases, and to avoid losses, you need to reduce the quantity of transported waste while keeping the total contract value the same, which means that you will reduce the output, which is marked in the graph as new output. Alternatively, you are forced to increase the contract value to compensate for the marginal social cost in case you are willing to maintain the original output obligation. This additional cost per output unit is what other economists began to refer to as the Pigovian tax. Now, there were great successors to Pigo and his theories. Such followers were Robert Ayres and Alan Keyes, who coined the term external cost or externality to describe the Pigovian tax. In 1969, they introduced a unique material flow diagram in their article Production, Consumption, and Externalities, which provided a detailed description of material flows and their weight in production. Now, this diagram was an innovative concept, representing the various types of transformations of material flows within the socio-economic system. Ayres and Keyes viewed the consumption as a simple transformation of matter and recognized externalities as an inevitable result of production and consumption phases. They explained that the total residual flow is equal to the total mass of raw materials extracted minus the amount of final goods that are recycled. To simplify, Ayres and Keyes viewed the life cycle of any product as a three-phase process. The first phase is the material processing phase that involves the transformation of natural resources along with minerals into useful products, and this process also requires energy, which is produced in a preceding phase. This phase is called the energy conversion phase, which is a consumer of significant amounts of natural resources and also relies on petrochemical products such as fuel and lubricants that are provided by the material processing phase. The third phase comes once the product is completed and enters the consumption phase, where it is either used to increase the inventory levels or to satisfy the needs of the end user. And during this phase, the consumer also consumes energy provided by the energy conversion phase. So far, there is only little to consider this flowchart as a breakthrough, right? Well, however, Please hold on and allow me to explain further as Urs and Nies dive deeper into the hidden layer. The consumers never fully utilize 100% of the product. Instead, they discard and emit various types of residues such as solid waste, sewage, recyclables, and CO2. This fact makes the material flow diagram the first document ever to consider waste and emissions as an essential part of any product life cycle. But that's not all. Urs and Nies also worked backwards through the material flow phases and highlighted the fact that material processing phase produces no less residues like organic and chemical wastes that may pose even more social threats. Additionally, the energy conversion phase produces harmful gases and ashes. And that's not all. They also incorporated the losses in both phases due to the process's efficiency and highlighted radioactive waste as a separate category of residues. What Urs and Nies actually did is that they created a guideline to implement WIGO principle in the product life cycle from a quantitative standpoint. And the remaining step was to calculate the social cost of each type of waste from the natural resources extraction and utilization, then processing till consumption. I remind you that this work was completed in 1969. Interestingly, we can still see these flow diagrams in recent graphs used by modern environmentalists to illustrate waste streams and emissions in the product life cycle assessment analysis and environmental impact assessments. One can only imagine the amazement of the scientific community upon seeing this diagram for the first time back then. The only remaining part now was to put a price tag on each externality, which was the task of the other bright economists, and we will explore this part in the next video.